I'd say it's near 100% of the time when I make these videos, you know that I will mention my higher power. And I've had a few friends over the years ask me, can you define that for me? Or tell me how you got there? Or what does it all mean to you, Kevin? The answer is no, but I'll give it a shot. Hi, everybody. Kevin Barheit here. Thanks for tuning in. Over the years, I have spent a great deal of my time searching for and defining and redefining my relationship with my higher power. And I've had a couple of very good friends ask me about it. One is one of my oldest friends, Jim. Hey, Jim. And Jim is an atheist, and many people in his life are, and his family. And he and I have been close for over 30 years, well over 30 years. And even though I've had a very specific spiritual path, and a lot of the dimensions of my relationship with my higher power are different than what he thinks and he believes, we have no problem communicating about our own journeys. I have another friend, BK. Hey, BK. And he watches some of these videos and has asked me, I think in the last year or so, Kevin, can you just define that a little bit? And when I say the answer is no, I can't define it for you. It's not because I don't want to. If we had a little one-on-one, I'd be glad to have a conversation. And it may lead down many different pathways, but it certainly wouldn't lead to my definition, because my definition is still in flux. Even though I have a relationship with a power greater than myself that's very specific and very strong, and on a morning, noon, and night daily basis, it is defined for me in relationship. And I think that's really been the most important thing for me to understand for myself, is my relationship with my higher power is about a relationship. It's about caring enough to be curious enough to find out what that relationship will be today. I'll be the first to admit, though, that the spiritual relationship that I have with my higher power hasn't always been welcome. It's not always been something that I even gravitated toward, especially when I was suffering, especially in my younger years, and especially when abuse was happening in my life, and alcoholism and addiction, and all of the abandonment issues that I struggled with from a young age. And I'm not saying that I didn't think that there was value. I understood that there was value for other people. I understood that there could be value for me, but I wasn't curious enough to open that door, that inquisitiveness, to be able to take that first step and say, well, what about for me? What will that mean for me? How can I open the door a little bit, or even just crack the door open a little bit, just so that I can see what a relationship with a power greater than myself might mean for me? I wasn't willing to do that. Sometimes I think I was just in too much pain to be curious, or to let the curiosity even spark. And that darkness that comes with not trusting my own instincts, that darkness that comes with not trusting who I am and what my own needs are. Because there were times when I really knew that I had emotional needs, and I had intellectual needs, and I even had physical needs, but the spiritual needs, I wasn't ready for that until I was ready for that. And I'd like to say that when I got clean and sober, that I was open to a relationship with a power greater than myself, but that isn't really true. When I got clean and sober, I was desperate enough to want to have a relationship with a power greater than myself, but it was more self-centered. It was more self-serving, that I wanted to have a relationship with a power greater than myself so I could be okay. And that's fair enough. That makes sense. I was scared, I was desperate, I was hurt. But it wasn't until I really started to wonder, what is it about the people that I see, that I can see there's a spark in them, that I can see something in their eyes, I can hear something in their voice, I can see the way they're living. What is it about the example of how they're living and how they think and feel that makes me want to know, what's your spiritual essence? What's your spiritual drive? What's your spiritual curiosity? What makes it okay when nothing else is okay? When I first graduated from college, before I went to New York City, I took a job for the summer working for the environmental planning lobby of upstate New York. And we would go door to door, knocking on doors, looking for contributions. And one day I went to the first door, and the woman that answered was Mary. And Mary was 85 years old, and after listening to me, she was so willing to give me the $25 that I asked for, but she said, my benefits check doesn't come in for another week. Can I post date a check for you? And I felt so terrible. I said, no, just never mind. No, I don't need your money. And she said, no, I really, really want to give you a little bit. Please, just take the check. And I let her write out the check, and I let her post date it. And I just stopped and I looked at her. And I heard something in her voice. I saw something in her eyes. And this generosity, this pure generosity. I hadn't been thinking about it. And I just said, "Can I ask you something?" She said, "Sure, what is it?" I said, your life isn't perfect. I know that you're struggling. I can see you have some medical issues. But you seem to be okay. And you seem to be happy. What is it that when everything else isn't perfect, no matter what's going on in your life, what makes it okay?" And without hesitation, Mary looked at me and said, "I trust my God, and my God takes care of me." Now, I just took that for what it was and said thank you and left. But something spurred me on. And every door I knocked on that day, every single door, I would ask people, what is it that makes it okay when nothing else is okay? No matter what's going on in life. And every door I knocked on and every person I asked that question, I got a different answer. Some people would say it was my job that did it for me. Some people would say it was my family, my children, my husband, my wife. Some people said nothing. I'm just okay because I'm okay. And the day went on and I kept asking and asking and I kept gathering this information. And then at the end of the day, the sun was setting. I was at the last house and I wasn't even going to ask the person. I wasn't even going to ask them. They were writing out a check for $50 and they were happy to help. And I said thank you to her for the money. And then I looked over and I said, this is a beautiful house. She said, "Thank you." And I looked at the church that was next door and I said, "It's really neat that you live next door to a church." I said, "Do you go to that church?" And she said, "Well, yeah, actually I'm the pastor there." I said, "Really?" I said, "Oh goodness, I got to ask you this question." She said, "What's that?" I said, "I've been asking everyone all day, all these different people, and they've all told me something different. When nothing else is perfect, no matter what makes it okay when nothing else is okay? How do you get through those days?" And she looked at me for the longest time and she paused. And it was probably 30 seconds. And I finally said, "You don't have to answer." She said, No, I just want to find the right words." And about 10 seconds later, she looked at me and said, "God's grace." And I'd really love to tell you that from that moment on, God's grace came into my heart and I never had a doubt. But it's not true. Because right after that, it was probably some of the darkest spiritual days of my life. I struggled because I didn't understand who God was to me. I didn't understand who my higher power was. I didn't understand what my higher power was. And I didn't know why I couldn't have a relationship with a higher power greater than myself. I kept trying and wanting and seeking and looking everywhere. And I finally told my sponsor, "I don't even know if I believe in God. I don't know what to do, and I feel like I don't know if I can go on." And he said to me, "Kevin, you have a higher power, that it's okay if you don't believe you have a higher power." He didn't let me off the hook, and yet he let me off the hook. And I had to let myself off the hook. And I did. And I just moved through the next period of my life without a relationship with a power greater than myself, without praying, without thanking God when things went well, and without praying for help when things went bad. And it wasn't the worst days of my life. I wasn't sad and lonely and scared, and I didn't feel like I was going to be damned or I was going to get hurt or that God, if there was one, was going to smite me down. I just felt like things just weren't quite as bright. The colors in my life were still there. They just felt a little bit muted. It was like life was a little bit gray. And then the moment did come that changed everything for me. I was in Brooklyn, living my life, and I knew there was something in me, and I had to admit it. I knew that God existed. I knew that there was a higher power somewhere. I just had no idea how to connect and have a relationship with that higher power. And so I said a prayer, and it was this: "God, I know that you are, but I don't know who you are. I can't find you. Please lead me to you." And the worst thing about that was, the next day I still didn't know who God was. And I said that prayer. And then the next day, I still didn't. And I said that prayer. And the next day, and the next day, and the next day. And as gray as those days prior to that had been, these were the hardest days I'd ever felt. Because I was waiting and asking and open and curious. And yet I felt that void. I felt that my prayers weren't being answered, but I kept praying the same prayer over and over. And just like I can't tell you that the grace came into me in that one moment, I also can't tell you that a day later, a month later, a week later, a couple of years later, everything became clear. Because it's been at least 20 years since then. You know what my prayer was this morning at the end of my meditation, in my moment of prayer with my higher power? It was one word: help. That's it, just help. It's been a struggle being home. I haven't felt well for days. Feeling a little better today, thank you, but I haven't felt well at all. And today, the best I could do was to say, help. And sometimes the best I can do is to say, God, please lead me to you. Please just lead me to you. So when you ask me to define my relationship with a power greater than myself, I say, yeah, that's a great question. Why don't we find that out together? When you ask me to define who my higher power is, I say, yeah, I'm looking for that too. I know that today, my relationship with my higher power can be as simple as saying, help. And I know if tomorrow that's the best I can do, that's all it needs to be. Because I'm more curious about what my relationship with my higher power will be tomorrow than I am with defining it today. I'm more curious about finding that out, and I'm more curious about finding that out with you, BK, and with you, Jim, and with any of you watching this. We're on this journey together. I know that for a fact. Those people that I knocked on their doors, we were all on that journey for that day. And now it's our time to have this journey together. And tomorrow, I don't know where it's going to lead. And I don't know if it's going to be easy or hard. I don't know if tomorrow I'm going to have some long-winded prayer from my higher power, or it's just going to be saying, help. But I know that tomorrow I will have a relationship with a power greater than myself. I know that for a fact. Even if it's just as simple as me saying, I don't know who you are anymore. Please lead me to you. I think one of the things that I've learned more than anything else is that when I am at my most full and connected to my higher power, sometimes that's when I'm growing the least. But when I am feeling the most doubt, when I'm feeling sometimes even the most despair and the most need and the most desire and the most desperate, is when my curiosity really blooms. It's when it's at its strongest and when I have the most potential for growth. I hope you're okay. I hope your health is good. And if you're struggling at all, please know I'm going to be keeping you in my thoughts and in my prayers. Please, if you get a chance, please like the video. Please share this with others. Please subscribe if you haven't already done so. Thanks for tuning in. See you next week. Take care.